Hi, I'm Sean.
And I'm Adam.
And this is SasqWatch.
Today we're going to be talking about Yeti, giant of the 21st century from 1977.
I have 20th century.
I wrote 21st, but it is 20th. I'll just do 20th.
This was 1977, and this is an Italian film, which excited me because I love Italian films from the 70s.
I don't necessarily. I like some of them, but I've seen others that I don't care for as much.
As soon as it started, I was like, I'm right at home here. This is just the kind of atmosphere that I want from a Bigfoot movie.
No paleontologist, no scientist. That monster is going to be the new Honeycutt Enterprises trademark.
Fantastic idea, H.H.
I was surprised it was in English. I knew it was an Italian movie, and I knew all the names attached to it were Italian, and then I go in, and we're in Canada, and everyone's speaking English with no Canadian accents necessarily, just...
Yeah, it's an Italian film set in Canada.
With, like, American English as the language being spoken.
This one's not for sale. Oh, I can't trust other brains, Henry.
So, all right, you hit play on Yeti, Giant of the 20th Century, which I will say, once again, we watched via Tubi. Tubi, you've become one of the patron saints of this show.
Yeah, we noticed that you also started making your own Bigfoot content.
He sure did.
Yeah, we support you in that. We'll probably end up watching your documentary. Was that them that did Bigfoot versus Yeti? Was that?
Yeah, Tubi
so
original.
We're excited to watch that.
If you didn't have the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Bigfoot, don't even come out with your friends because you're nobody.
So yeah, we sat down with it, you hit play, and the very first thing that happens is the ice is melting. Big chunks of ice are falling down. And you know, like, okay, this is going to be an eco 70s kind of hipster kind of thing going on.
I hadn't considered that. I assumed it was just going to uncover the Bigfoot. Because I knew he was going to be frozen from, like, the description of the movie.
Well, the 70s had a nice run of nature run amok movies where, like, we are hurting the environment and the animals just start killing us. And I love those movies. So I was like, okay, sweet. The Yeti's going to come out of the ice. He's going to go bananas. He's going to kill people. We're going to get right to it. Instead, we go...
He's just, as you would expect any, like, normal person to be, just terrified. So every time that he, like, comes to, he's just like, ah!
All right, well, before we get to the Yeti, though, the first, like, scene in the movie is you meet Professor Wasserman. He's, like, fishing.
Professor Henry Wasserman. Yeah, they do, like, the we gotta bring you back for one last gig kind of deal where he's, like, off living on his own, off the grid, and some man comes in a helicopter and finds him and is like, we need you on this project.
I need your brain for a humane expedition up in North Canada.
Yeah, so he's, like, fishing, and the helicopter's buzzing around, and you can tell he's like, it's them. I know who this is. So you're expecting, like, I've seen this scene a million times. What you haven't seen is the dude coming to get him lowered into frame via, like, a padded chair from the helicopter. So he's sitting there with his cigar, like, and he stops in midair.
Big puffy coat with his bow tie.
And I'm just like, God bless the Italian people.
Hi there, Henry. I'm here. Hot liquor soup with beans and side pork. That's just what the doctor ordered, old buddy.
So he gets down there and he's trying to, like, recruit the professor. onto the mission, and I'm trying to pay attention, but then he starts like drinking eggs, and I was like,
They're saying his name is Honeycutt.
Honeycutt. Morgan Honeycutt. Yeah, he comes in with very obvious bad guy energy, and you're like, obviously I can't trust this guy. This guy's up to no good.
Right.
So then we follow the professor, and then we meet
Cliff Chandler.
Cliff
Who's
Chandler.
kind of overseeing the thawing process. I guess he's kind of Honeycutt's top agent kind of guy.
Yes, he's the dude up there, and then we also meet Jane and Herbie.
And their friendly dog. No, we don't meet. Do we meet Indio yet? I don't think we do.
Indio's the dog, and it took a while for me to figure out what I thought the dog's role in the film was, because for the most part, it just shows up and barks and runs away, and I was like, I'm not sure if this is anyone's dog, or if this dog is just around.
Eventually, it was clear that it belonged to like Jane and Herbie.
Yeah.
But that wasn't clear at the beginning when the dog first shows up, because it's when they got that big crowd.
Jane is talking with Cliff, and this is where, again, I want to emphasize this is an Italian film, and part of what's great about that is it means everybody's dubbed. So
they all looked like they were speaking English to me.
Oh, dude, I would bet money that all of Morgan Honeycutt's scenes are dubbed. Every time he was talking, I was like, that is clearly not the original sound of this scene.
Oh, there you are, Chandler. I want you to take your men and organize a security service at the United Motors warehouse. My granddaughter and the Yeti are there, and I don't want the police or anyone to get near them.
Which warehouse?
At the foot of Humber Road. At the foot of Humber Road.
But anyway, they're dubbed, and we get the tragic backstory that Jane and Herbie's parents died in some kind of accident, and they're like the grandkids of Morgan Honeycutt. And she's this like super hot blonde
I didn't realize
woman.
that was. I didn't realize that's who they were at all. I thought they were Cliff's children.
That they were
the
Cliff's
longest
children,
time.
but he was flirting with her.
I
You didn't pick up on that?
I guess not.
No.
What's your grandfather going to do with it, Jane?
Herbie's mute.
See, I must have been writing stuff during all of that scene because I didn't know that either. And so as the movie went on, I'm like, I guess he's just mute and they never say anything about it. But I guess I missed that line.
You did, because what blew my mind was that somebody says the reason that Morgan Honeycutt is excited to bring this frozen Yeti back to life is because somehow he thinks doing that might yield medical research into making Herbie not be mute anymore.
He's fascinated just watching. Oh, I suppose we've been spoiling the boy, especially my grandfather, who's like a father and mother to him.
If science can revive that thing there, then maybe your brother can recover too.
They've tried everything, Cliff. Herbie lost his voice when he was in that plane accident in which my father and mother died.
Is that why he's got like magical healing saliva?
Wait, what?
Bigfoot with his magical healing saliva.
I missed that.
Later in the movie when he like licks his hand and then pets the dog and then the dog's just like better later.
I totally missed that. I thought he was just doing that. I thought he was just spitting. I really did. Okay.
I don't know that that's what happened, but I wasn't sure why else he would just be like spitting in his hand before he pet the dog.
All right, so that's we're trying to
we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
So they're unthawing the Yeti, and you're meeting like the professor, and there's like the kids, and there's Cliff, Chandler, and Morgan. That's the crew, basically.
Yeah.
I want to say, before we get too much further, I very quickly identified that Professor Wasserman was a terrible professor. And
you didn't think he was a good professor?
He's a terrible professor. Terrible professor. And I think we've covered enough films now that we can definitively say that one of the tropes of a Bigfoot film is a professor who has no business telling anyone anything at any time. All right, because two things that he says really early on that I was like, well, that's just not true. One is his reasoning for how the Yeti got to be frozen at the North Pole. Was he was like, obviously the Yeti lived in the Himalayan mountains, got swept away in an avalanche into the ocean, which I'm just like, Mount Everest is pretty far from the ocean. That's a hell of an avalanche. Into the ocean, which must have been the Indian Ocean, and then somehow
got to the North Pole.
So I was like, okay, that's quite a leap. And then he's like, once they like de-ice him, he's still frozen, and they're like, we're gonna put him in a cage and we're gonna pull it via helicopter, which is the helicopter's its own thing. They're like, we're gonna pull him up to the altitude of the Himalayan mountains because there's more oxygen up there. And if you're watching this, there is not more oxygen up there. It's the same amount of oxygen. The difference is the pressure up there. So this guy isn't a professor of nothing. So they get the Yeti up to this altitude and they start like pouring hot water on him. And then Professor Wasserman's like, let's shock his brain. That'll help. And I was like, sure, I'm the best that'll help. And then what happens? What happens when the Yeti wakes up?
He just starts screaming. He's just like, and they're like, oh my gosh, we gotta stop him. So they're like, use the gas.
Yeah.
And they hit the gas, and it's shooting in there, but nothing's happening. And then the doctor's like, oh, the front panel is open. And then he clicks a button, and this panel shuts. And it's like, why was the front panel open?
Why was it?
Like, why did you include that line? It just made him seem really stupid.
So you're watching it and you're like, okay, that's a shaky plan, Professor Wasserman.
Yeah.
So you would think, like, all right, let's go back to the base. Let's analyze what happened.
They're like, oh, he woke up. Like,
Yeah.
he's awake. And they're like, no, we're going to go show him off.
Yeah, they immediately set him back down. And they let all these people just come up and surround him. And then he says, unlock the container. And I was like, why? Why would you unlock the container? So they do that.
Just like, nobody do anything to like seem out of the ordinary or like scare him or anything like that. You've got like a whole stadium, a group of people sitting around watching as he's like coming out of the cage.
Yeah, he like starts to wake up, and immediately there's like the people who won't stop with the pictures.
Yeah, they're trying to set up lights and
there's
take
the people
flash
who've got their
photographs.
guns that are like, we're ready to shoot him now. And the professor's just like, don't shoot him. And then the dog starts barking, and the first thing that the Yeti thinks, he's just like waking up and he sees this dog barking. And I'm just like, Professor, this is not a controlled environment. There's so many X factors going on here, man. I don't know what you're going to study. I don't know what you think is going to happen. So what happens?
He starts screaming.
Just like, So then I think he picks up Jane, right?
Yeah, he sees the dog. He sees Indio the dog protecting Jane and Herbie, who've like fallen on the ground, and I guess he feels pity or something, and he like sees them as a family, and he's like, they can be my family. So he like picks up Jane, and then Herbie and the dog like follow them, and he like does the King Kong thing where he carries her off to like a cave.
I want to pause you right there. So he's carrying her. That scene's happening, and in my brain, I'm thinking like, all right, this is a classic Italian film equation where somebody went and said, we're going to do that plus that equals this. We're going to do King Kong and Tarzan with Yetis. And I'm watching that, and I'm doing that, and then I look up, and I'm like, hey, is she touching his nipple? And yeah, Jane is...
What?
Yeah, I swear we could find it right now, because I was so aghast. I was like, excuse me? She was like in his Yeti hand, and she looks over and she just like touches the Yeti's nipple and then takes her hand away, and there's a shot of the Yeti's nipple hardening. And I was like, excuse me? So yeah, she totally caressed his nipple. I forget what the anatomy term for it is, but like you see it, you know, react. Yeah. And I was just like, and then you see the Yeti's face.
His face the whole movie. He's just like...
It's a performance. Okay. You can't blame that act. I blame the director. Because that actor clearly gave it everything he had.
No,
Oh, Herbie.
So then they get to the clearing, and there's a couple minutes where he's like bonding with them.
Yeah, he's...
And you're like, okay, so he's going to be a friendly Yeti.
He lets the dog run off, and they tell it to go get everyone else to like come find them, and then he's bonding with them. He brings them fish.
All right, the fish is the next thing. You've got to break down the fish. Because it's not so simple as he eats some fish.
I wrote, that's a huge fish. What?
All right, so there's 3 crazy things that happen right back to back to back. What's the first crazy thing?
Bigfoot walks up bringing them some fish. So we're like, okay, he sees them as part of his group or something.
Not some fish.
It's a giant fish. It's like a whale-sized fish.
In Upper Canada? Like, are we even near the ocean?
Oh, yeah. So giant lake fish or
walks
whatever.
over with the world's biggest fish.
And then he reaches his hand down to hand it to Herbie. And Herbie reaches out and then just has a small fish. And with the big fish is still there too, isn't it?
So you're sitting there and you're like, okay,
it's like video game logic where it's like, yes, this big fish is 50 fish, and you can just pull fish out of it.
And so then Herbie starts like nibbling at it, and I was like, "No, you're not. No, you're not."
And she looks over, and he starts eating his big fish, and then Jane's like, "Well, come on, Herbie, like you need to eat the fish." She's like, "Come on, like that's right, bite it." And then Herbie's just like,
the fact that Herbie's mute never stops being funny.
Yeah, because he just looks, and the kid's not like giving us a lot with his like silent performance. He's just kind of looking around. He looks like a very small, not younger, because I don't know that Timothy Chalamet can look younger, but it looks like if you just shrunk him back to child size.
So your brain's trying to process these things, and then what's the third crazy thing that happens within like 2 minutes?
Then Bigfoot finishes eating his, and it's just the bones, and he kind of like gives it to Jane, and she's like, all men are the same, and I'm like, they give you fish heads? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. They eat all the food, maybe? I don't know. But then he picks it back up and starts brushing her hair with the comb of the fish comb that he's made, and then
when it works, she kind of loves him after that.
Yeah, she's like, oh, Bigfoot, you're sweet and nice. We shouldn't be scared of you. And then
the professor and the gang of Cliff and the hunters kind of find them via the dog.
Yeah.
And they immediately are like, oh, he looks like he's nice now. And Jane's just like, we've befriended the Yeti, and we're kind of a family now. And the professor's like, well, obviously he thinks of you as his wife.
Yeah, which I was like, when I had thought that that's where we might be going, but then when he did the thing where he like brushed her hair, I was like, oh, good. It's like a son and daughter kind of thing here. Like, then he's like, she must think of you, or maybe you were his wife or something. And I'm just like, dang it, we are doing that. But then they don't really, so that's...
Well, he probably thinks
they cheat her close.
That Herbie is his son. And I was like, why would he think that? Why would he possibly think that Herbie is his son?
He's adopted you as his family. He's mistaken Herbie for his son, and maybe you for his wife.
It's hard for me not to like that movie now, actually, because of... probably because of all of the meme content that it generated, but it makes all those scenes so much funnier now. Really, the whole original Spider-Man trilogy has been memed to death in a way that actually makes it funnier for me.
Makes it better.
Yeah.
They're in the meadow, and they're like, okay, Bigfoot's happy. He's a happy, friendly Bigfoot. And then it almost smash cuts to a group of screaming children at the mall. And I was like, what?
Yeah, that surprised me too. And then we get this cut of like, I guess Honeycutt used...
Honeycutt Industries
likeness to like blast onto the like wider media scene and like just have a ton of Bigfoot products everywhere.
Marketing. There's like a gas station promotion
we
going
see a
on.
ton of women wearing these shirts with like Yeti hands grabbing the boobs. And
and it's crazy because at first you
just
only
see them all walking like that.
It's
and
like 15 girls in a row walk in with these matching t-shirts of just like hands right on their chest. And I was like, wait, what? And then one of them turns around and the back of the shirt says,
"Kiss me, Yeti."
And I was
Which is like, what does that mean? I don't understand.
That doesn't make it make sense. You're just like, oh, okay. It's a Yeti thing.
Our sales have more than doubled. And they'll soar sky high when the Yeti gets here.
So that's, God bless the Italian people. You know, this is how you get.
And then
those kind of scenes.
From there, we cut to a scene of like these businessmen in a room passing around this like large goblet that they're like putting these little go chips into almost.
Before that scene, because I have notes specifically in order. Before that scene, because that scene really confused me, there's a different scene of Morgan Honeycutt in his office being shaved by a servant who is referred to as a slave. And it's eerily similar. Yeah, the Professor Wasserman is on like the video call watching him being shaved, and he's like, "Oh, that your slave should just cut your throat." And I'm like, this came out before the movie The Color Purple. Are they ripping off The Color? Why is this scene? So you're watching Morgan Honeycutt being shaved, and you're like, yeah, he's definitely the bad guy, right? And then the scene you are talking about happens.
Yeah.
And what's that scene?
I thought the same thing about that point. I was like, oh, okay, so he is the bad guy. And then we cut to the scene where these guys are passing around this goblet around their like business room. They're all putting chips that are black or white in, and they're like,
for the Pope.
The ballots have been cast. So like, Kowarski, you have been chosen. And then he like gets up, and they're like, all right, it's time to introduce you to our real leader. And I was like, wait, is he not the leader? Didn't they just? What did they elect him to do?
And how do they how do they show us the person? Do they just come through a door, or instead, because it's an Italian movie, it's a giant rotating door?
Yes. Spins. And who is it? None other than Cliff Chandler.
Yeah. And I was like, why is he there?
I was like, huge twist. Cliff is the boss. And they made sure to tell us that this company is like Honeycutt's main rival. Because this is the first time we've seen any of this. So they had to give us some reason to be like, these are bad guys. So then it's like, oh, these are the bad guys? Is Honeycutt not a bad guy?
I was so confused that I watched that scene twice, and I didn't get it the second time, but I was like, I'm not doing this again. I'm just going to keep going, and maybe it'll make sense later.
We're on worldwide right now. 1.5 billion viewers. The TV cameras are picking up the new Honeycutt trademark.
So then we get to the streets of Toronto, where a big parade is being held, because the Yeti is coming to town. And so they bring the Yeti in streets filled with people. And what happens?
He freaks out. He starts screaming. He's just like, ah!
Again, this is Professor Wasserman's idea. Why? This is the third time that he's just woken him up.
No more flashes, please. Please don't.
So
he breaks out and he runs away into the city. And Jane ends up finding him.
Well, there's like 10 minutes where he just smashes stuff in Toronto.
Yeah, he's just running around breaking things.
And then somehow he finds like Jane in an elevator in a building. And he like punches through the roof of the building.
That part was weird. It seemed like he was trying to destroy the building, but then he found Jane in the elevator and was like, "Oh, I want to save Jane," or something. I don't really know. And was she trying to get away from him? I thought she was looking for him.
No idea. I have no idea.
So that was all really confusing.
And then the Yeti sees that Jane is in danger, but she put her in danger.
Yeah.
And then there's an awesome scene where the Yeti has to descend the building to go down to help Jane. And the way he does it looks pretty. I love the effects.
The way when he just kicks in all those windows.
I want Patrick to go through and count every single window that we see his foot smash through. I know it's more than 10. So after the Yeti saves Jane, Jane apparently doesn't care about all the damage that was done beforehand.
No, she just wants to keep him safe.
So she hides him in a stadium.
And then she calls Honeycutt and it's like, I've got him hidden. And Honeycutt's like, you need to take him to this warehouse, to this factory place that I know.
How's she going to hide him in a stadium, though? There's like literally, there's a scene of 2 cops who are just like, no idea where he's at. Nobody's got a sight on him. I was like, what do you mean nobody knows where he's at? You're saying that nobody could see
him go in there
at all times where this thing is?
You don't have a single helicopter up?
Sergeant McIntosh.
We're being flooded with calls and the chief is ready to bust. Have you found the Yeti?
No, but he's reported to be in the area. We're going after him now.
Honeycutt sends Chandler to help.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, the Yeti's starting to get sick. He's really sleepy and drowsy.
Yeah, because he doesn't have enough oxygen.
So
he falls asleep and is like dying.
He's so big and yet he seems so helpless.
He is, Jane. Bring that oxygen over here, will you, please?
And they're like, we need to give him oxygen. And luckily the doctor is now a part of the family, A. And B, has oxygen that he also has, like, you know, the tube when you've seen somebody that's on oxygen, they have a little plastic tube that goes up into their nose. He's got one of those just ready sized for Bigfoot. So he plugs that in and it's like, I'll just chill on this recliner here with a blanket and read some magazines.
So they leave. They leave Professor Wasserman there.
The recliner and the blanket, the magazines and the oxygen. Where'd all that stuff? They were in a factory.
I don't know where it came from, but they clearly leave him in charge and he immediately passes out and falls asleep.
Yeah.
And I was like, what kind of a professor are you, man? Like, there's so much science happening now, and you fell asleep like 5 minutes into watch. Like, the papers are falling across your lap. So then the henchmen...
Yeah, the 2 henchmen that Chandler left there are like, all right, we're gonna like make they sabotage the machine, so they like release all the oxygen so Bigfoot won't get any more oxygen and he'll die. And then they wake up the doctor and kill him. And they just kill him by shoving him into a crate repeatedly. I don't know why they don't do it in a different way, but
so at that point in the movie, I was convinced that this was trying to be a kid's film. So it's like, obviously they're gonna take him hostage. And they start beating the crap out of Professor Wasserman, and they're shoving him into that, like, it's like a metal, like, file cabinet. And they, like, once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and then he's dead. And I was like, oh my god, they killed the professor.
Bigfoot, like, kind of wakes up while this is happening and witnesses it. You think maybe he's going to stop him. I thought he was going to stop him. I didn't think it was that kind of movie, but I didn't expect, like, a lot of, like, I don't know. I didn't know what I expected, but I thought maybe he would wake up and save him. But no, he just woke up to see him die, and then he passed back out again.
Who did it? Oh, the Yeti was the one. He just went wild.
The guards then beat themselves up. They don't actually do anything to themselves, actually. They just lay on the ground.
They're trying to frame the Yeti as if he killed Professor Wasserman and also hurt them.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, your plan is so complex. All you had to do was shoot him. All you had to do was just kill the thing. Like, what are you doing?
They could have just shot Dr. Wasserman and taken the oxygen out, or thrown the oxygen next to the Yeti and then blown it up, and then just that would have been it. The Yeti would have been dead. That's all they wanted, right? Maybe they wanted the Yeti. Maybe the competitor company probably wanted the Yeti, I guess. Old Chandler.
Well, the group returns, and there's like half a second where they're like, well, should we save the Yeti if he killed people? And of course, Jane's like, well, yes.
And she's like, he couldn't have killed people. He wouldn't have done that.
So she gives him oxygen, and the Yeti wakes up. What happens when the Yeti wakes up, Adam?
He starts freaking out. He's just like every other time that he's woken up so far in the movie, except when the girl's there. He just like looks at everyone there, and he's just like, ah! Ah! And then he looks, he sees those guys, and he just runs after him, and he's like, I'm gonna kill those guys.
Oh yeah. So then
he chases them into a field full of construction vehicles.
I would like to take a second to say that the scene where he kills the first henchman has to be one of my absolute favorite deaths in any Bigfoot movie I have ever seen.
This is the most creative Bigfoot kill, I would say, especially because this one really makes use of the Bigfoot. I know exactly what moment you're talking about.
I watched it three times.
You think he's going to squash him under his foot.
He does a little bit.
And he does. He puts his foot down on him, and then he's like pressing it down. All you see is the foot, and then the guy under it like, So he's pressing the foot down, and then he lifts up the foot, and you're like, oh my god. And I was like, well, he is a peaceful Bigfoot. Like, it makes sense. Mercy. He's gonna show mercy, and the guy will like, everyone will come to like, and then he flings his foot forward.
It was crazy.
The Bigfoot toe choke.
It was crazy.
That was definitely the wildest part of the movie. And then he just kills the other guy by like destroying part of the building he's in, and he just kind of falls over a railing and dies.
I believe that they built a Bigfoot for that scene.
They
too.
had to. I feel like
Bigfoot for that scene. Can you imagine being on set that day and they're like, all right, dude, so first the foot's gonna kind of mash you a bunch, and then you're gonna have to help us here because we can't really work the toes. You're gonna have to help us get your head in there
right here. Yeah, kind of aim it with your hands a little bit, and then we get everyone kind of like the bad guys. So there's two bad guys left. There's
I don't know what happened. I was laughing so hard for just a minute. I don't know
and
what
Chandler
happened.
Still around as the bad guys, and like Chandler gets the girl and Herbie. He like kidnaps him and gets him in his car.
Oh my god! I know. Okay, there's a minute. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
there's a minute towards the end of this movie where this is where I was like, this is 100% not a children's film.
No, they hear the plan, right? Oh, you mean when Chandler like
so crazy, so fast, where I was like, this is more indicative of what the Italian films I know are like.
There's just one problem. The girl caught on.
That's not a problem. An oil drum, a bag of cement, and Lake Ontario will solve that.
I guess you're right.
Yeah, this is before we even leave the factory. Before they get stolen in the car. We're still in the factory. The other guys are dead.
Jane and Herbie are in there. And bad guys get real bad for a minute. And like the dog comes in and is like, hey, I'm going to protect these kids.
Yeah, so he jumps and like bites Kowarski's like arm, and then he just pulls out a knife and stabs the dog in the neck.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, oh my gosh, that dog looks like, so cool.
Oh my. So they just kill the dog with this knife. And then there's a minute where like they push Jane onto like this bed that I had no idea was in the factory.
Once again, where's this furniture in this factory? And then he starts like pulling her clothes and stuff.
The movie got real sleazy, and anything could have happened. Anything could have happened there. But thank God the Yeti bursts through like the roof of the building, and it's like first he's pissed. Then he sees the dog.
Yeah, he's mad. He scares the guys off a little bit. And then he looks down and he sees the dog like dying on the ground. And he like reaches down. And then he like gets some spit. He like is looking at the dog. He's got spit dribbling out of his mouth. And he drops it into his hand. And then he just like rubs the dog. And I'm like, what is he doing? Is he bringing it back to life? And then it like dies. The dog like closes its eyes. The dog's a really good actor.
Stabbed to death. I'm still processing that. Now there's spit happening.
And then the Yeti goes, ah! He jumps up and he goes running after the guys who have at this point captured Jane and Herbie, and they got him in a car.
And they're driving away.
Chandler's driving away. Kowarski's in his own car. They got a third car.
He gets real.
Bigfoot comes running in. He crushes the second car.
Yeah, Bigfoot throws a tree at a car first.
Yeah.
And it explodes. And I was
That's what happens, right?
I was like, who all was in that car?
Nobody we knew. And then the front car had Kowarski in it, and he like goes to that car, and they get out, right? And there's a little battle.
Bigfoot
Not really
blows
a battle.
up 2 cars.
He just kills them all.
He blows up 1 car. No, there's 3 cars. Okay. He blows up the first one with a tree. Car. He blows up the second car with a boulder. And then Chandler's car he throws, but they get out first.
That's right.
So he destroys them all, and the big fight.
He crushes Kowarski's car, with the boulder. Yeah, and then the big fight happens, and I actually did miss the part where he killed Chandler at first, and then I went back and saw it because they didn't actually show it. They show him like hit the foot coming down, and then you cut to Jane as it goes crunch. Yeah,
there's a squish noise that I really liked. I really did enjoy that. The fight at the end where Cliff is like fighting the Yeti, and he's in a piece of construction gear. It reminded me a lot, and it came out before this, but at the end of the movie Carnosaur, there's a ridiculous fight between the T-Rex and a guy in a bobcat. This movie made me think of that. Anytime a movie makes me think of Carnosaur, I like it.
Okay.
So Herbie. So the Yeti wins.
Yeah, and then we've got like a bunch of military people around, and like Honeycutt shows up, and everybody's here. Or maybe it's police. They got a bunch of guns pointed at Bigfoot, and then he kind of comes up and he's looking at Jane and Herbie. And there's family, and she's like, go away, you need to go back and live, in the Alps or wherever you're from.
She kind of insinuated that he might be a girl for a second. Did you get that line?
No.
She's like, boy, girl.
Yeti. Boy. Girl. Thank you.
And I was like, wait, what? I'm pretty sure he's a boy. What? So I was really confused, and then she basically says, like, you need to go back to your home.
Right, that's where you need to live. It's not safe for you to live here. Plus the oxygen thing would be expensive. She didn't say that, but I feel like it was implied.
Well, then he turns and walks away, and I was like, well, wait, what's home? You're in
he's
Toronto.
just gonna walk. So somehow he's gonna get. I don't.
Where's he
how
going?
He's going to get there. I guess maybe he'll get big enough to walk through the ocean because his size is so inconsistent in this movie. Oh, then after he leaves.
What's the last
thing? I guess
thing?
he doesn't even find out. Indio the dog survived, I guess because of his magical healing spit, or maybe he just wasn't going to die in the first place, and the spit was just like, the actor was just so like dry from making all those faces.
All right, so the dog's alive. How does the film tell us that?
He just runs in. He just like runs in, right? Like,
he runs in slow motion. So
yeah.
You get
you get the scene of the slow motion dog running, and then Herbie running to meet the dog.
My favorite part of that was that they smeared a bunch of blood on the dog's fur so that you wouldn't be too confused. You're like, no, he did get stabbed, but he's not dead.
This is the same dog.
God. And then the last shot of the movie is the ice is melting. And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. And credits.
I thought we were gonna like uncover like
more big feet now.
Well, because they at one point, like when he first was talking about how Jane and Herbie had become like his surrogate family, and I guess Indio too, that he was like he must have had a family where he came from, so he must have had a wife and kids. So I was like, oh, the ice is gonna break, and we're gonna see like his wife, Bigfoot, but that didn't happen. It just broke, and then the movie was over.
How are we supposed to tell people the plot of this movie? It was really hard.
I mean, that's what we did.
to convey the experience.
Yeah, there was a lot, but we went through it. characters were, I mean, we pretty much talked about the characters all we could here.
They were insane. I thought that Cliff
Wasserman you've sold me on him being a terrible professor. I wasn't really thinking about that while I was watching it, but I think you're right.
Professor Wasserman? Yeah, terrible professor.
You know, Herbie
was not a character.
Not really.
He made me laugh.
He basically showed no emotion the whole movie.
Jane was pretty. I don't know what else to say about Jane. They give her nothing to do beyond...
And then Cliff Chandler was like as much the normal human bad guy that you don't expect as the bad guy.
He was so bland that I thought that Cliff and Chandler were two different characters for a long time.
Keep the crowd back. I'll follow.
Wait, Professor, you can't go alone. Bring a first aid kit, and the rifles, too.
I was shocked that Morgan Honeycutt ended up not being the
bad guy. Yeah, he just was like a grandpa that runs this huge multi-million-dollar business and like acts kind of shady, but really just loves his grandchildren and like makes a lot of money.
Anyone who gets shaved in their work office is a shady person. This movie, though, has more of a character in the Yeti than most films we cover. So what did you think of the actor who portrayed the Yeti?
I weirdly was like, thought about the performance of the guy from The Passion of the Christ. Do you see where I'm coming from, though? Where these big... First of all, they both have this weird, like...
I'm
like
seeing what
manly,
you're saying.
like angular face, but also there's like an innocence and youngness to it that you like kind of see them as like this wide-eyed kind of like person, and they both used a lot of big facial expressions. I don't know. I think he just has that same kind of look anyway.
I think he was given,
and then that actor was in a movie that like. A movie related to Jesus at one point, and I was like, oh my gosh, did he play Jesus? But he didn't. He played a different character.
I think he was given an enormously difficult challenge.
I think he did all right.
Yeah.
I mean, he entertained me in his role with no lines and like but he was also really silly too. Oh, yeah. And the story was ridiculous.
Yeah, so. I mean, you have to, though. Do you want that performance to be deadly serious? I don't.
No, there's no way for that to work. No. That would have just made this movie way more boring than it already was. I mean, it wasn't like super exciting. It was just pretty funny at times.
Creature estimated to be over 1 million years old. Toronto is honored to be the first to greet this ancient ancestor and promises a warm welcome.
All right, well, let's talk about the technical side of the film.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, some of the, like you said, they built a Bigfoot for that one scene.
Yeah.
Breaking through all the windows in the apartments looked fine.
I think the effects were cool.
Yeah, I think it was actually pretty decent on that end, especially for the time. I mean, it's no Star Wars, but Star Wars was like groundbreaking at that time. So like,
sure, but there's nothing wrong
still wasn't
with
bad.
a silly little B movie effects-wise. The cinematography, I think, there's like a certain look those 70s films have, and I think that sometimes it's really fuzzy and boring, but in this particular case, I think it helps sell some of the effects because it makes them feel a little bit more fun and silly. I think the secret weapon of the film, like many Italian films, is the score.
I disagree. I highly recommend that there's a video on YouTube that it's pretty funny looking itself. That is the video, like, is the song Yeti by the Yetians. So you should do yourself a favor and listen to that funky disco sound.
Lastly, let's talk about social value. What is this film's role in society?
It's ripping things off. It's doing Lassie and King Kong and Tarzan. It's even like a collie. I don't know.
I mean, sure, it is this plus this equals this. It is not high art, but it is so relentlessly silly.
It is. I mean, I have to assume that the song Yeti was made for the movie, so at the very least it brought that song into the world. And if it didn't, it at least, helped to put some great context behind it.
I think this is a great example of a movie you put on without telling people what it is or anything about it. You put it on and you watch everyone else in the room.
So this is,
You see what they do.
This is a favorite party trick of Sean's, is to find a room with a TV and just put on something that no one would expect. And this is a perfect thing for that.
Go ahead, Stryker.
The Yetis killed a Professor Henry Waterman and 2 unidentified men in the United Motors warehouse area.
Best is when you stumble upon people talking about it and they don't know you did it. And you're just like, what's up, guys? And they're like, oh, I saw some crazy stuff in that room over there. Do you know who put that on? I think it's really interesting. I think it's an interesting, goofy, silly little asterisk in the Bigfoot genre. And as far as ratings go, are you ready to rate it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go first. I am going to give this film 4 big feet.
Wow. No.
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely.
No. I'm thinking of giving it a higher score than most. I wish that I should keep just an ongoing track of what I've scored every movie in order. That way I really feel like I can give more accurate things, but I'm going to have to give it 3.
3? That's high for you.
That's really high for me, I know. But I mean, it had a lot going on. It's not, I think, abominable. And I think I've given 2 movies 4 big feet before. And this one's not among my favorite of the things we've seen. And it's bad, like everything else we've seen. But it's got some interesting stuff here. The effects aren't that bad. The music, initially, my first note is I love Carmina Burana. So I was like, this is going to have great music. And then they just overdid it for me. But I mean, there's stuff that I liked here. I like the dog. I like dogs. I like animals in movies. And this dog was really cool looking. It was like it's a collie that was colored different. It was like a darker colored collie. It was really cool. So
I mean, fight it. It's okay. You like the movie.
3 big feet. 3 big feet.
Yeah, I'm going to say my reasoning for not giving it 5 is that I couldn't do that. I just couldn't because it's so bad. But the part where he kills the dude with his foot, I was like, I love that. I love that scene, and I'm going to show it to people. Yeah, I'd say the first thing that is notable about this Yeti is that he's very large. This is the biggest Bigfoot that we've ever encountered.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely the first thing you would notice is that he's anywhere from 20 to 100 feet tall kind of ranges, but no matter when, he's always the biggest one we've seen.
Yeah, even at the smallest that he appears in the film.
Yeah.
I think that it's pretty easily, he's a kaiju. It's a kaiju foot.
Yeah, kaiju foot.
Pretty cool. Cool. I would say the next thing that I found very interesting was that this Bigfoot has the most voluptuous hair.
He does have a lot of hair. His hair resembles, you guys have a similar do going on. You don't quite have the ridiculous chops that would form the full...
Are you saying that I have similar hair to the Yeti in this film? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, do one of these real quick. You guys decide. Anyway, we don't know. We never see him shower. Where does he bathe? He has to bathe under a waterfall.
I mean,
he just doesn't. Probably doesn't.
If he's from the Himalayan mountains, I assume he just rolls around in the snow.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, another first. This is the only Bigfoot that we've encountered where we can definitively say that his nipples will react to being touched.
Yep. That's true.
The smooth muscles of his nipples will contract if perturbed.
He can get hurt by bullet fire. He potentially lives in a family unit. He kind of has a family idea structure. Maybe they have dogs, some version of dogs where he came from, or maybe he sees the dog as a kid. We never got a clear answer there.
I would say that speaks to a larger concept of this just being a friendly giant.
Yeah, he's generally good-natured. He's scared being in this time that he's not from, in this place that he's not from.
Friendly but irritable.
Yeah, simple tools. He can do that, kind of. He used the fish as a comb, so
true.
He might have, some other ideas for things he could do. He kind of used his tree as a weapon a couple times, or critters. He needs a lot of oxygen. He can't survive on the oxygen where we all live. Not in Canada either. He needs tall mountains, I guess.
Lots of oxygen, sure.
Or just being in the sky.
It's just helpful to be way up high in the clouds.
Spit, maybe some healing properties there.
I'm not sure. I'm not going to say
just a slaughterer.
I'm not going to say you're wrong. It's possible that his spit healed that dog, but I think it's equally possible that he just so happened to be drooling in that scene.
Yeah, possible. He's got good control over his toes.
Oh yeah, dexterous
toes that he can use to choke somebody or crush their windpipe. That's about all I have for this Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's. I think it's a lot to chew on. That
I don't know that we know what he eats. He never really eats or drinks.
He eats fish.
Fish. Oh yeah, he eats giant fish.
It's giant fish
from wherever he gets those.
Is this Mr. Honeycutt?
Yeah, that's me.
This is Ralph. Professor Waterman is dead. The Yeti killed him.
Welcome to SasqWatch, where we crunch the numbers. There was one Yeti in this film, or Bigfoot, whatever you want to call him. The movie says as much as well. He does kill a decent amount of people. He kills 11 to 14 people. Now, some of them were indirectly. He kind of scared them off, and they fell into pits or off ledges, but we'll count those here. And then there was one kill of human-on-human violence. Of course, Henry Wasserman. The Yeti was on screen for a record-breaking 12 and a half minutes abouts. That is the most Yeti or Bigfoot we've seen in any movie so far, even beyond the animated one, Bigfoot or Bust. We're both pretty happy to see like a movie that's actually like kind of more in the vein of what we're doing here get to these numbers, but still 12 and a half minutes out of an hour and 40-minute movie. I don't know, just seems like not much big feet in these big feet movies. Now this movie takes place in Toronto, Canada, home of the Raptors. SasqWatch. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
That's for the outro.
We're doing the outro. So for our next episode, episode 10, and the last episode of this season to speak, is going to be another documentary. This time we're going to do a very short documentary series. There's only 7 episodes. It's a show called Bigfoot is Real.
See you there.
I'm real easy to catch stuff, movement and stuff after from when I was a prison guard. Other things in the National Guard, camoing up, being able to get down, hunker down.
SasqWatch. Don't make me fucking quote Bully McGuire right now. You gotta be professional. All right, anyway.
I'm going to put some dirt in your eye.
Well, you gonna cry?
Little goblin gonna cry?
What are the people of Tibet supposed to do when he shows up? They're just...
I don't know.